You've reached the Char Hotline, your pep talk turned podcast. It's your direct line to unshakable confidence, unapologetic self love, and the permission slip you didn't know you needed to show up as your true self. This is your safe space for a whole lot of heart, honesty, humor, and healing. I'm your host, Char, a self love and confidence coach, your compassionately candid hype woman, and a woman of color on a mission to help you ditch the BS, cultural conditioning, your own self doubt, or what society or your family says you should be. Together, we'll figure out what it means to embrace your true self, get out of your own way, set boundaries, and live a fulfilling life on your terms. Whether you're a recovering perfectionist, overcoming people-pleasing, here for the listeners' questions, or getting some actionable tools, join me to feel seen, heard, and empowered. Tune on in and learn to love yourself first, always. Quit playing games with my heart. All right. Welcome back to the Char Hotline, and this episode I'm going to talk about how to break free from perfectionism and people-pleasing. I thought with the launch coming around in December before the holiday season, this one and the next one will be about boundaries. It's so important to talk about, especially with the holidays coming up, but all the time, year-round as well too. Well, first off, I've been there. I still go through it. I mean, I want to say we all do, but I've met people who don't struggle with perfectionism. It may or may not be a cultural thing. I find a lot of Asians, a lot of people of the global majority, people of immigrant parents with immigrant parents or immigrants themselves do struggle with this. I don't know. Tell me if you do or don't. But for me, I definitely struggled with it a lot and continue to, but have really worked consciously and intentionally to, I call myself a recovering perfectionist. These perfectionist tendencies still come up, of course, and it shows up day to day, but also shows up as even more now, I find, in different ways. As a parent, it shows up in work, shows up personally, and social media does not help either. So yeah, we're definitely going to talk about being a recovering perfectionist. How do we break free from that and also break free from people pleasing? You may or may not know, really identify with these words or resonate with these words, but maybe if you feel burnt out and overwhelmed sometimes in your personal and professional life, you may be struggling with perfectionism or people pleasing too. So yeah, so let's just dive in. I like to kind of start with defining what perfectionism and people pleasing is for me. And for me, I think as much as we talk about mindset and reframing things, defining and redefining words has been a huge tool for me in my self-love journey and in my healing journey. Okay, so perfectionism for me is, you have it all, appearing and looking like you have it all. I think definitely it's fear-driven, fear-based behavior to never ask for help and just take on the world and take everything on and be perfect and appear perfect, have it all together, don't look frazzled, don't look a hot mess, trying to always get and I guess as a child, as a kid growing up, it was get good grades and then get good job. Look, again, this might be an immigrant thing. I'm not an immigrant, my parents are, but it might be a cultural thing where it's you have to be dressed well and present yourself well, how you speak and how you look, right? My partner and I watch this documentary about biracial mixed race kids and how to raise them, and just even me as a person of color, I can't necessarily identify with topics that my kids might come up with because they're mixed race. Anyhow, in this documentary, this one thing that really stuck out, these parents of mixed race kids said, I would never let my kid leave the house with mismatched socks because he can't have just one more thing pinned against them because they already appear different without opening their mouth, without speaking, without doing anything. Just how they appear as non-white. They just didn't, that's their generational trauma. And for me, and then I looked at my partner who's white. I was like, crap, is that why I care so much about my kids, how our kids are dressed when they leave the house? I don't really let them choose their own clothes. On certain days, if we're staying at home, if we're just going to grandma and grandpa's house or something, yes. But if we're going to go out in the public, in the wild, I'm very conscious of what they wear and make sure it's clean, make sure they match, they're tidy. But again, who deemed what matches? So that was a long definition of perfectionism. I think it's definitely fear-based. For me, I've learned a lot that I think it's the attachment to my self-worth, attachment to my worth, if to achievements and accomplishments. If I look perfect, if I have a cool job or good looking job or like a job that looks fun and glamorous or well paying, I look like I have it all together. I look like I have the perfect life. What is the perfect life? And you know what? Truly, no one's perfect. We know this. We know this. But why do we still strive for this? And what is perfectionism? Who set the standards for perfectionism? I think a lot of it is based on media and society and culture and families, right? For me, for example, I'm not appearingly perfect in the way that for a Chinese girl or Chinese person, I'm not like porcelain pale skin. I'm a little darker, I'm a little taller, I'm a little bigger than I guess your typical Chinese girl, which I mean, we all come in different shapes and sizes. So again, that's like arbitrary. That's set subjectively by someone else. Yeah. So definitely I think it's perfectionism is the set of standards we strive to live up to, whether that's standards we've self-inflicted or actually it's probably almost always influenced by our external factors like our family or society, culture, people who are around us. So definitely perfectionism. Define it for yourself. What does that look like and feel like to you? People pleasing similarly is fear based as well too, but it's like a survival mechanism to fit in. And like if you think historically, evolution wise, people have to fit in with a group, with the tribe or whatever it is, right? To survive, or else you would be banished. And I mean, in today's world, I guess canceled or whatever it is. So that's where a lot of the burnout comes. So I would say perfectionism, you get a lot of burnout that's more they're both self-inflicted, but it's more like internalized. It's like you're getting burnt out because you're overwhelmed and you're always constantly trying to like live up to these unrealistic standards. And people pleasing, you get burnt out because you're constantly trying to put everyone else around you first. You're constantly trying to please others and do things for other people, the shoulds, which we'll get into, right? Like, I should do this, I should do that. You get burnt out trying to please everybody else and ultimately not pleasing yourself. And yes, sometimes we want to do things, genuinely want to do things because we want to make other people happy. But the people pleasing, toxic, negative side, I would say, is when you want to do something for some others that doesn't align with what you truly want to do. And that's when that misalignment is where you're going to get that burnout and that overwhelm. Yeah. So I think both, I would say for me, perfectionism and people pleasing show up in different ways. They're very, very similar, but to me, they both stem from this fear of rejection. If I don't look perfect, then I'm not worthy enough. Then people won't like me. Then I won't get that promotion. Or personally, people just won't like me. People pleasing, if I don't try to keep the harmony, if I don't do this to help others or do this for others, fear of rejection, then they're not going to want to come to me. Yeah, so it really comes from this enoughness, right? Am I enough? Am I worthy? But for me, a lot of that comes from external factors. So, how will I look for my self worth within myself? I know that I'm enough. And that ties into the self love, the self confidence, and self esteem, where we don't need to seek external validation. We don't need to be a people pleaser or perfectionist to then be worthy enough of people's love and affection and attention. We can give that to ourselves. Or maybe it's a safety thing. If I keep everyone happy and do all of this, and then I'll be safe, that survival mode. But we can create and seek that safety within ourselves. If we can be secure and safe, we don't need to seek it externally. And what happens for me is that when you seek it externally, then you start doing things that you don't really want to do, or not saying things sometimes, and just not being the genuine, authentic you. I know that's a buzzy word, but just not showing up as who you truly want to be, the best version of yourself, or advocating for yourself because, like you don't speak up because you don't want to stir the pot. You don't want to upset anyone. Fear of rejection. So that as we talk about how we've defined perfectionism and people pleasing, define it for yourself. Pause this episode or just take a pause and reflect. What does that mean to you? What does perfectionism and people pleasing mean to you? Do you, I don't want to say suffer, but maybe like, do you experience that? Maybe it just shows up differently, or maybe you label it differently. So think about that. So now that we've defined perfectionism and people pleasing, what does perfectionism and people pleasing block? What are the negative traits and the negative side of this? I think for me, it shows up a lot as stress, burnout, a lot of self doubt, because now I'm trying to listen to these external voices and this noise outside of me about how I should look, how I should talk, what should my life look like? For example, it's like, oh, I should be further ahead in my life, or I should be further ahead in my career. Why, right? Like, then I'm just seeking something else, but I'm actually really happy where I am, maybe, right? And it's not to say not to have a, like, not to still, you can still have goals and want to want to strive for different achievements and accomplishments. But what is it that we're attaching to that? I won't be enough, or I won't, I'll be worthy, or I'll be so much more important when I get to there, or when I get that promotion. Because I think for me, it's really filtering out the noise and tuning into myself and telling myself I'm enough as I am right now. I'm exactly where I need to be right now. I can still strive for different goals, accomplishments, achievements in life, but I'm not attaching my enoughness, my worth, and ultimately if I'm worthy of love, or am I fearing rejection because I don't have that title, that promotion, or have that nice car, or whatever it is. And it doesn't necessarily have to be tangible things, but those are just examples. So an example is in building my coaching consulting practice. I decided in 2019 to do this, but I didn't actually publicly launch until this year, 2024. And I think it was just like towards the end of 2023 that I actually started saying it out loud to people in my personal life, in my inner circle. And why was because there's a huge block of self-doubt. And for me, finally being able to articulate it was fear of failure. I was like, oh, I need to get certified before I can do this. Oh, I need to set up the website. And there were all these stipulations I put on myself. Like, it had to be perfect before I could go and serve clients, and before I can go help people, and before I can publicize it. But ultimately, I was holding myself back. I couldn't build my business if I never told anyone that I wanted to become a coach. So it was stepping into that and letting go of that fear, letting go, detaching from that fear of failure, detaching from I can only be perfect when blank, right? This really helped me once I had a coach that said, we look at building blocks, like kids building blocks, or whatever, building blocks. And we look at it as success, success. And then we look at failure as like all the blocks crumble and we have to start all over again. But instead, the visual is a building block, and then a failure is just another block on there. And we just keep building off of it because, again, we'll get into this success and failure. I guess we can go into now, like success and failure. How do we define that? Failure is just an outcome that we did not desire. But instead of seeing it as like, oh, I'm such a failure, that sucked, it's what did I learn from that and what can I do differently? Yeah, so I think that was a huge one for me with the perfectionism within, as an example, was within my my coaching practice, which ultimately isn't just a career or a job, and just a business. It's me, it's my heart-centered business that I want to put out in the world to help others. And up here said to me, one more day of me, my self-doubt holding me back is another day someone out there that really needs to hear my voice and really needs my help will have to struggle and suffer on their own. And that was very powerful and profound for me. That really helped me step into being able to fail, right? But taking it as opportunities to learn. And it really empowered me to do a lot of work. I did some hypnotherapy, did inner work, shadow work to really detach from my fear of failure and my perfectionism tendencies that was holding me back in my business. People pleasing, definitely a recovering people pleaser too. I feel perfectionism, I feel like I struggle with more still. People pleasing, I feel overcome. I've overcome. It still comes up though. I think for me was a lot family dynamics. There was a lot of people pleasing, trying to keep the harmony, and that might be a cultural thing, but also it is hard, right? With family, very different personalities, and I was trying to, just like keep the harmony, keep the peace, and don't speak up for myself, which is shocking to think of now. I think anyone who knows me personally, yeah, I wouldn't speak up. I wouldn't say anything. I just wanted to keep the harmony. But really, at the end of the day, I was still being shit on for not, even when I didn't speak up, I was still being shit on. And like people were making up stories about me and rumors and this narrative that was going around about me that wasn't true. And yeah, the people pleasing really snuck in of like, okay, well, I'll just keep doing my thing and still showing up to these family gatherings. And at the end, it was my partner and I really coming together and learning to set those boundaries, which that'll be another episode about setting boundaries. But the people pleasing was, okay, this is really affecting my mental health. This is really affecting now my physical health because of the poor mental health and the energy. And I was crying a lot and getting like, I didn't really, I mean, maybe I experienced anxiety before and I just didn't know it, but I didn't think I've had panic attacks because of trauma and PTSD, but I think experiencing anxiety, that became a big thing for me when it came to family dynamics and some issues that were coming up, family drama. That feeling that anxiety of having to go to a family gathering later that day, I was like anxious and on edge. I was irritable the whole day leading up to it. And that just was not healthy. And that's when I was like, okay, something's got to change. Because I'm generally not a big crier. That's a whole other story. I'm a bit of a robot, and I know that's not healthy anyhow. And so I think the people pleasing, feeling the negative, toxic side effects of people pleasing and feeling that anxiety, feeling super stressed and unhappy, that for me helped me to realize, then to learn how to say no without guilt or shame, how to set boundaries without guilt or shame, and prioritizing my mental health, honoring my values, but I had to get clear on what was important to me. I didn't even realize there's a misalignment with all this family drama. It's just like, okay, let's just deal with it. Let's just keep the peace. But ultimately, it was like, this isn't the life I want to live. This isn't how I want to be. So I want to emphasize when we talk about people pleasing and perfectionism, it's not being heartless or careless or selfish. It's finding the balance of honoring yourself, being true to yourself, while also loving those around you. Being mindful also of who you can choose and select who's deserving of your time and energy and your love and affection. We don't have to just give it away willy-nilly. We can make that choice, that conscious choice ourselves of who we want to spend our time and energy with. And so it's taking care of yourself. And there's two things that come to mind is, the marketing in me is like know, like, and trust. When we have a product or a brand, it's a whole thing about marketing. You got to get to know them, get to like them, and then you trust the brand or product to buy from them or buy that thing. But let's turn that back into ourselves. We really need to get to know ourselves, what our core values are, what's in alignment, what's not in alignment. For me, a big thing is like, don't just go with what mainstream media or like what the next basic bitch next to you is doing, right? Like, if you really like something, cool. If you don't, then honor that. So get to know yourself and then trust yourself to make those decisions, make those choices, get to really know yourself and then like yourself, love yourself so fiercely that you can then trust yourself to make decisions in alignment with your core values and with your energy and make decisions that honor your true self. And so that comes up. The second thing is how you speak, treat, and respect yourself will then show others how to speak to you, how to treat you, and how to respect you. You almost demand that from people by showing that by example. So if I say, I don't want to go to this event or I can't make it, and I stick to it, not because like, oh, but you should, or, everyone's expecting you to, or, oh, it's going to look bad if you don't go or you don't show up, then I'm like, you gotta just honor yourself. Like, no, that's not for me. And if someone sees that, they might be like, A, they might learn for themselves, but B, they're like, okay, I got it. Like, Char's going to honor herself. She has boundaries. And people will then learn. If you speak to yourself poorly, like this whole self-doubt inner critic thing, that'll be another episode too, is how we speak to ourselves will then show and emulate outside. So if you speak to yourself, even inside your head, very negatively, that's going to show, and people will feel that they can do that too to yourself. If you have wishy-washy boundaries and you don't really respect yourself and you do things just to please others, then people will like, and that's when we get into that like a people pleaser and like a pushover, which has a negative connotation. But for me, that is a negative thing. I don't want someone to think that they can just push me over. I want someone to say that they can reason with me and I'm open and judgment free, that they can, and I'm a safe space that they can maybe say something to me honestly and openly, but then I can get curious. I am secure enough with myself that I can then not project things negatively to someone, but I can rather come from a place of curiosity, but not necessarily like I'm a pushover and I'll just, put aside my opinions or my thoughts just to please someone, just to show up the way someone wants me to. Let's get into actual tools to break free from perfectionism and people pleasing. For me, stop shoulding all over yourself. I say this a lot and you may hear more. I say this a lot to my clients. It's just like one easy tool. When you say should, I should be further ahead in my career. Oh, I should go to that party. Oh, I should say this or do that. When we say should, for me at least, majority of the time, it's an external factor that's influencing that decision making that might make it a bit blurry or cloudy. When I say should, versus like, oh, I get to go to that party. Oh, I'm so excited. Or I want to go to that thing. Or I want to take this job opportunity. I think that's very different from I should do that. And so when you say should to yourself, I would encourage this as the first tool is to pause, filter out the noise, and tune in to yourself. What is it that you want to do? What do you get to do versus you feel like you should do something? Again, always with a balance. Sometimes there are things we need to do, like this is like a common example I hear is like you have to do your taxes. You got to do it. I don't enjoy it. When you catch yourself saying should, pause, filter out the noise, and tune into yourself. What is it that you really want to do that will energize you instead of drain your energy? What would feel good? So catch and release. Catch yourself saying should and then release the should and turn it into I get to do this or I want to do that. Or maybe it's a no, I don't want to do that thing. The second one is practice saying no without guilt. I literally Googled this before years ago when my partner and I were really struggling with some family dynamics. And I looked up, got down this rabbit hole and was like, the art of saying no. So it says, no is a full sentence. That's a whole consent thing, I know. But saying no without the guilt or shame. Being confident in saying no to something. Don't make up excuses or lies or fake things. One, you cannot keep up with the stories, but like what they say when you like over justify or over explain, that person might be shady or lying or something. Just don't, thank you for thinking of me, but no, I can't make that dinner. Just say no. Don't make an excuse. But yeah, if you want to say a bit more, be like, thank you for thinking of me, but no, I can't make it, or no, maybe next time. But don't say maybe next time if that's just misleading and you genuinely don't ever want to see that person or something. I don't know. But no, practice saying no without the guilt or shame and just honoring yourself. And I've had friends ask but like, for example, plans, like a family event. They're like, how do I just say no? And what do I come up with and pretend I'm doing something? I'm like, you do have plans. Your plan is to be by yourself and have self-care time, right? Like they're like, I have to like make up an event or make up something I have to do. And I was like, just say no. And if they ask, like, yeah, I have self-care time. I feel like that won't even fly as much as well. But anyhow, you do have plans. Even if it just means sitting on your own couch by yourself. That's plans to honor yourself. Maybe you need to unwind after a busy season or a busy week. Just say no. And I've gone really good at that. And I would say my partner's been really good at saying that and feels zero guilt or shame. So it's been refreshing to learn and see that Also a white cis heterosexual male who hasn't really experienced a lot of trauma or adversity in life. So, and who also doesn't feel like they've struggled with perfectionism. So very, very different lived experiences. But so for me, it's been a process and a journey to learn to say no without guilt or shame. The third one is, this one's hard. Celebrate wins. Celebrate imperfect wins. I have a love and hate relationship with the word imperfect, but also I love to say perfectly imperfect. But yeah, celebrate those wins. When you do say no the next time without any guilt or shame, celebrate that. Whatever that might be, like a nice bath, binge watching a show, having a nice snack, having a treat, going for a walk, whatever it is, celebrate. Or just say, yay, you did it. Just like pause and celebrate. It doesn't even have to be something tangible or big or huge. Just celebrate that. And so I would say, yeah, so celebrate an imperfect win. If you wanted to practice this one, I would say at the end of every day, write one thing down in your journal or book or your phone or whatever it is you want, or just in your head. I always like pen to paper and having something. I believe there's science around that. But anyhow, at the end of every day, write one thing that you want to celebrate that you did that defies what historically we would say is a success or a failure. As easy as I spoke up in a meeting today for someone who doesn't generally, I love to speak. Like, I love the spotlight on me in meetings. I have no problem public speaking. And so, but if that's something you are working on, like, I spoke up in the meeting today at work, or I said no without guilt or shame, or like I asked a question even though I was scared that I might seem stupid. I asked a question anyway. And yeah, so I would say that's the third tool. To recap, the three tools I came up with on this episode was: one, catch and release should. Stop shoulding all over yourself. Pause and reflect when you say should, if it's something truly you want to do or you get to do that you're excited to do or not. Two is learning to say no without the guilt or shame. Three is to celebrate your wins, perfectly imperfect wins. Write it down at the end of the day or reflect on it at the end of the day. One win that you want to celebrate. Did you say no? Did you catch and release a should? Let's break free from the perfectionism and the people pleasing BS so that we can all just show up who we really want to be. Do what we want to do, say what we want to say, and just be our genuine selves, because then we'll love ourselves, practice that self love, show up as secure, then we don't project onto others, because it's that fear of rejection, that fear of your worth that gets caught up, and that's why we project and act out in ways that aren't always compassionate or kind to others or to ourselves mostly. So I want to encourage you to reflect on something in your life that might be causing you stress, more self-doubt, or overwhelm and burnout when it comes to perfectionism or people pleasing, and how you might be able to take a little action to adjust it a bit so that you can have more energy and really honor yourself and make decisions that are in alignment with yourself. And ultimately, you'll show up as a happier person if you love yourself, and then you can show others how to love themselves, and you'll show up as a happier person and probably less irritable and annoyed. So thank you for joining me, and I want to invite you to send me your feedback if you'd like. Send me your thoughts or anything that you'd like to hear on future episodes. Feel free to submit anonymously or not to the Dear Char segment. Anything that's coming up for you in your life, or any questions you have, or something that you want to ask for advice on, and I'd love to hear from you. Please, if this resonates with you, please follow, share, and subscribe to the Char Hotline. And if you feel called to, give me a review or a 5-star rating. And to close off, I want to say and remind everyone, you are enough. Let's quit playing games with our heart and show up who you really want to be. Until next time, stay true, stay bold, and stay in love with yourself. Bye.